So over the last couple of months, one of the biggest subjects on the internet among the wrestling community is Karrion Kross. Kross was one of the more featured superstars in NXT during his heyday, holding the NXT championship and challenging guys like Adam Cole, Samoa Joe, and others. He had a nice look, he had Scarlett by his side, an amazing entrance, and all the makings it looked like to be a future superstar on the main roster. But then, unfortunately, he came to the main roster.
Comfortable presence when Karrion Kross enters an arena. What the fuck?
This sudden approach in his character by just stripping away all the things that made him work in NXT by Vince McMahon failed terribly. On night one, I might add, as not only did he have that shitty ass entrance with the straps and that stupid ass mask, but then he proceeded to lose his first match. Mind you, he was still the NXT champion. Unfortunately, this became a common theme for a lot of NXT superstars during the Vince McMahon era. But Kross would go on to have a couple of matches on the main roster that were nothing special whatsoever, and shortly later, he was released from WWE. He would join the long list of superstars such as Aleister Black and Keith Lee, among others, wrestlers who obviously were not given the fair chance on the main roster to succeed and live up to their full potential because the guy in charge, which was Vince McMahon, did not see that potential in them. Fast forward, and the old man in charge is no longer in charge as Triple H takes over as the head of creative, and Karrion Kross comes back in an amazing return. He beats the shit out of Drew McIntyre, he has Scarlett by his side, and they even tease a potential feud between Kross and Reigns. But here we are in 2025, and Karrion Kross seemingly is no longer in WWE. As it seems like now, despite peaking in popularity with fans, especially on the internet, WWE is not really that interested in bringing him back, or at least there are some issues with contract negotiations that didn't turn out favorable for Kross staying in WWE. And I'm gonna be honest with you guys, because it seems like nobody wants to tell the truth about Karrion Kross, but this is not WWE's fault. If anything, I'm sorry y'all, but this is on Karrion Kross, not WWE. And I get it. I already know what some of the replies are gonna say. I know what people are saying online. How can WWE not bring this guy back or push him to the moon when he has such a peak of popularity right now? Well, I'll tell you why. It's because Karrion Kross really is not that good. It's that simple. When Triple H brought Karrion Kross back to WWE, he was immediately put in a program with one of the top stars in the business, Drew McIntyre. And do any of you guys even remember how good those matches were? Because I can't. Those matches were very mediocre. They were not special, not memorable in any way, shape, or form, and he wasn't booked that strong. And I do think WWE has some blame in that, because when you book him against Drew McIntyre and Drew McIntyre has a championship program against Roman Reigns, you don't want Drew to just be losing clean like that. But at the end of the day, you didn't have to book it that way. He didn't even have to attack Drew McIntyre. But nonetheless, I don't even think people would have cared if he cheated to win if those matches were actually just good. And herein lies the beginning of the problem with Karrion Kross getting these on and off pushes. The match quality is very disappointing time in and time out, because Kross would then continue to have matches and programs with wrestlers who were great in the ring, and consistently those matches were very underwhelming, as he had a program with Rey Mysterio on SmackDown. And I remember even going into that match saying, man, if Kross can't have a great match with Rey Mysterio, then there's a problem here. Lo and behold though, the match was mediocre. Kross even then entered into a program with AJ Styles, one of the best in the world. Sure, this isn't prime AJ, it ain't TNA AJ, but even now, forget a couple years ago, but even now, AJ Styles is one of the best wrestlers in the company. And I can proudly say those matches were boring. And at some point, this isn't about AJ. It ain't about Rey Mysterio, and it ain't about Drew McIntyre. There's one constant theme here, and that's Karrion Kross. He was constantly booked in these mid-card feuds that did absolutely nothing for him or the wrestlers involved. Drew was coming off of a feud with Roman Reigns, and though he did lose, he was probably the top babyface in the company at the time, especially with Cody Rhodes being out. A lot of that momentum went away after he feuded with Karrion Kross. Rey Mysterio is one of the most over babyfaces in the company, and even he had some momentum halted by feuding with Karrion Kross. And in the case of AJ Styles, I remember people on Twitter thinking that he was the problem. They were saying AJ was washed when he was feuding with Karrion Kross. Do you guys not see the issue here? But even despite all of those things that WWE did for him by bringing back his entrance, pairing him back with Scarlett, and giving him 3 feuds against top guys in the company, and seemingly it was obviously not working for him, they then gave him a stable, a faction for him to lead. They paired him with AOP and Paul Ellering, and literally the only memorable thing they did was botch a table spot in a 6-man tag at WrestleMania against Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits. That group was boring, they were uninteresting, and had absolutely no memorable moments at all. But then fast forward to this year where Karrion Kross started to get over with the audience organically, as Kross would have numerous interviews where he's essentially saying, listen to the fans, listen to the people. How can you leave me off WrestleMania in my hometown Las Vegas? As Kross was in the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, and fans were behind him, obviously with them being in Vegas on SmackDown. This will lead to Kross being a top merchandise seller, fans chanting "We want Kross" on numerous Monday Night Raw shows, and despite him being limited to backstage promos and commercial break segments, the reactions were very noticeable for him anytime he popped up on the screen. And I remember thinking to myself, man, maybe they should do something with Karrion Kross. I may not be the biggest fan of him, but at the end of the day, you gotta strike while the iron is hot, and obviously he was hot at that time. I mean, this company is notorious for saying if the fans want something, they're gonna give them what they want, and Karrion Kross was even best for business as he was a top merchandise seller. He was moving their bottom line. Kross would have multiple, and I mean an insane multiple amount of segments with Sami Zayn going back to before WrestleMania. He would consistently question Sami Zayn's true character, tell him he's never going to be a world champion, and it would all boil over a couple of months ago right before the Night of Champions pay-per-view in Saudi Arabia, as finally we were going to get the match between Sami Zayn and Karrion Kross. Around this time, there was also even stuff about Karrion Kross's contract coming due, him and Scarlett to be specific, so it was pretty obvious that this feud and program was going to be a huge deciding factor for him and WWE's partnership going forward. So these matches with Sami Zayn meant a lot for Karrion Kross's future. But just like every single time Karrion Kross is given the opportunity, unfortunately it fell flat on his face, as just like pretty much all his other matches, it was fucking boring. But the feud wasn't over. They gave Kross even more chances. They extended the feud and even had another match on Monday Night Raw, as Sami Zayn was attacked by Karrion Kross backstage with a lead pipe, and it contributed to Sami Zayn even losing their match on Monday Night Raw, setting up the rubber match between the two at SummerSlam. But I'll be remiss if I didn't say that Monday Night Raw match though between them was terrible. It was not a good match. It was boring, slow, and sure it told the story, but that story could not save how much of a bore it was to watch. But honestly, I still gave Karrion Kross a shot, at least in my view of him, because I was figuring maybe they'd add a stipulation, or at bare minimum Sami and Karrion Kross were just waiting for the final match to really go all out. And I have to say, neither of those things happened, because just like their first and their second match, sure, there was a story to it, but the match was boring. And at this point, we got AJ Styles on the resume, Rey Mysterio on the resume, Drew McIntyre on the resume, and now Sami fucking Zayn. You're trying to tell me all these guys were the issue in their matches, or was it the common denominator, Karrion fucking Kross? The fact of the matter is, the guy just doesn't deliver in the ring whatsoever. It doesn't matter what opponent you put in front of him. Kross isn't a bad wrestler by any means. I don't think he's trash, but he's boring. He's not spectacular. He's not a crazy athlete or a high flyer or a mat technician. He works a very slow, methodical pace. Kross shines really with his character work, his promos, and presentation. And honestly, that's a good thing. It's a nice hand to have on the roster in the mid-card. But truly, what ceiling is there for a guy like that? I mean, I understand people want to say Jey Uso won the world championship, so anything is possible. But when you look at Jey Uso, he actually is a better wrestler than Karrion Kross. And if you don't think that gap is enough to even mention, fair point. But Jey Uso also was a tag team wrestler first. He didn't start off as a single star. Yes, Jey did benefit from his family being the bloodline, but at the end of the day, it is his family. Okay? Karrion Kross doesn't come from that situation. He gotta work harder to get those opportunities. It sucks that it's like that, but it just is. And as over as Karrion Kross is with the crowd right now and fans online, he's not as over as Jey Uso. And I have seen some of the things that Karrion Kross has said just over the last 48 hours since his contract has been up. He talked about how a lot of his interview comments, a lot of his segments where he's embracing the crowd, or even some of his tweets rubbed a lot of people behind the scenes the wrong way. And honestly, I can believe that 100%, because this company, whether it's Vince McMahon or Triple H in charge, they have a history of being annoyed and flat out spiteful towards wrestlers who get themselves organically over without the company's help, i.e. somebody like Zack fucking Ryder. Look at how it ended for him. But at the same time, I can also acknowledge that Triple H has given Karrion Kross numerous opportunities and it just has not panned out. It started off with him giving him a fucking job back into the company after Vince let him go. Then he gave him back the presentation that Vince took away from him by pairing him back up with Scarlett and removing that stupid ass mask. Then when he failed to get over on his own, he paired him with Paul Ellering in the AOP to lead a faction. And when all of that shit failed and the fans naturally organically got behind him, he put him in a feud with one of the top guys in the company, Sami Zayn. And in all those attempts to repackage and rebuild Karrion Kross to a star level, not a single match you can point to and say that was a memorable moment for him, because he's really incapable of having consistently great matches. I do think Kross can be a great hand in the mid-card. I truly do believe that. His character work alone cements him in a spot like that on the card. But if Kross thinks he's anything better than that, he is definitely entitled to believe so and try to find that success outside of WWE, but with the body of work that he has actually shown in this company, I just don't see that in his future. And if the company was just being petty, they didn't like Kross saying certain things online and in interviews, well, that's on them for being lame as fuck. But I can promise you one thing, they are not going to miss somebody like Karrion Kross. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe in the future, he'll repackage himself like a Drew McIntyre and come back bigger, better, and stronger. Until then though, people need to accept the reality that Karrion Kross, quite frankly, is not as good or as important as a lot of y'all think he is.